Who is it in your life that taught you to live well and to love well? Who is it that shaped your values and led you into the person you are today? One of the assignments that I would have when I was teaching for several years in Ethics in Society course was name the person or couple people who shaped your values the most, who taught you what a good life looked like. There was a second side to that assignment. Not just name them and describe and how your life was living into their lives. But the second part of that assignment was for 10 to 15% of the class, every time, 10 to 15% of the class, sometimes 20%, would say, I never had someone who taught me what it was to live well or to love well. And I would say to them, well, I bet you had someone who you vowed you would never, ever be like. Tell me about that person and the values they held and why you're trying to live a life differently than they lived their life. The papers would come in, and I would always be amazed to see this 10 to 15% who had lived through hurtful behaviors and human dysfunction and pain, and I would be reminded of how much the human heart yearns to see glimpses of generosity and lives of integrity and acts of kindness. And it started me thinking, what if every time I walked out into my world, through the doors of this church, through the doors from my house, from my car, what if every time I walked out, I remembered in my heart 10 to 15% of the people that I would bump into had never experienced a radical act of kindness in their lives. And we're trying probably to figure out how to do that, how to be that kind of person who is kind and loving and giving in their lives, but had never seen it in action. And so needed someone to show them. None of these people go around with one of those hard luck lives signs on them. They're just out there. And many of them want more for their lives. But they need help along the journey. And speaking of help, you've seen the signs if you've been out and about. Help wanted. We're hiring. Everywhere the college students are going and doing their thing for the summer. There will be new workers, not quite knowing what they're doing sometimes because they're new workers. And there will be places that are understaffed because they don't have the workers, and those workers will be a bit weary and worn out. And it is our chance to get irritated. It is our chance even to laugh at this one. Now hiring, if you have a clue. It is our chance to approach things that way. Or it is our chance. It is our chance to think 10 to 15% of these people not only are learning their job and don't know it perfectly, 10 to 15% of them have never really experienced kindness and consideration in their lives, or Jesus-like patience, or love, or gentleness, all those fruits of the Spirit Paul named for us. In the next month, you and I are going to have endless chances to be day brighteners for people, to be a little extra patient when our order is wrong, or when we have to work through helping someone give change back to us, or when the person in the store doesn't know where the items are because the items were moved or they just got to the store themselves. We will have the opportunity to make others feel like family and appreciate in the way that the best of moms do. In April 2008, Julio Diaz, a New York City social worker, was walking down the sidewalk. He was going home after work, going toward the subway, and he was mugged by a young man at knife point, who took his wallet and went off idea. He simply called out, "Hey, wait a minute." And the young man turned around and he said, "You know, it's cold out tonight. You might want my coat too if you're going to be doing this all night. You're going to get a chill." And the young man came back a bit startled, and Julio gave him his coat. And Julio said, "You know, I was going out for supper. Would you like to join me?" And the young man joined him. And they went to this place that Julio always went to. He was chatting with people and calling back to the dishwashers, and everybody knew him. And Julio said, "You seem to know everybody in here." He said, "Yeah, I come here a lot." And he said, "You talk with the dishwashers. I mean, people don't do that." He said, "Well, sure they do. Haven't you heard you're supposed to be nice to people?" And the young man said, "Well, yeah, I've heard that, but I've never really seen people be nice to each other." They had their conversation, their supper. And Julio said, "You know, I'd get the bill, but you have my wallet. Maybe you could get it." And the young man just slid the wallet back across the table. Julio paid the bill. He said, "You know, you have kind of a nice knife. I'll give you $20 for it." And the young man said, "Here you go." How that story ends, I'm not sure. What I guess is there were some other people who weren't mugged that night. What I guess is there's somebody that did end up resisting and getting stabbed. What I'm guessing is there's a mom somewhere who had a hunch that her son was getting himself into trouble a lot, and suddenly her son that night wasn't arrested or wasn't thrown into prison, incarcerated, and learning to be more heartless, but was learning a little bit about what it meant to be kind and caring, and that there were good people in this world. Jesus said, if someone strikes you on the cheek, give them the other cheek also. If someone robs you, give them your coat also. Greater love has no person than laying down a life for a friend. Jesus said, forgive 70 times, 7 times. And Julio said to his mugger, it's cold out. You might need a coat. I wish I knew the ending to the story. But we don't get to see the ending to other people's stories often. We get to live our own lives and examine our own stories and see what we're doing with our lives. And when we look at what we're doing with our lives, when we hear Julio say, well, here's life. If you treat people well, you hope they treat you well. And this complicated world doesn't get much simpler than that. We don't get to know the end of the story. But if Julio can give a coat to his mugger, we can be certainly a lot more kind to those who mess up our order, to those who are having trouble waiting on us. If Julio can take his mugger out for supper, we can curb our tongue, I would think, or go the extra mile with the people we claim to love, sometimes as people right in our own homes. We can treat our moms better. We can treat the sons and daughters, and everybody's a son and daughter of a mom somewhere, we can treat them better. If Jesus can lay down his life for us and whisper, forgive them, they just don't know what they're doing. We can certainly start to figure out what it is we are doing that hurts others. And we can let go of those times we feel offended. And we can utter a lot more, well, what would you like? Rather than I expect or I want. Living and loving like Jesus, the Jesus of the cross, is a daily adventure. And I pray none of us goes out and gets mugged. We live in an area where that's pretty rare anyway. But I do pray all of us will go out and ask today and through the week, how can I share more generously? Can I reflect?